Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025 edition of Douglas Now Live. I am Robert Preston Jr. in the Douglas Now Live studios, which also double as the 106.3 The Tree Studio. To my immediate right is the Tree Desk and the logo where we used to do coffee break, where we did coffee break for so long. So it's a lot of fun being over here in this studio. A couple of things I want to talk about real quickly. Don't want to get too into the weeds with some of this stuff, but there are a few things I would like to discuss. And I'll go ahead and tell you, we're going to talk about the GHSA's decision to not fight the injunction that a Superior Court judge placed on them regarding the suspension of a lot of players from Gainesville High School following a fight between Gainesville and Brunswick in the state football playoffs. If you're not familiar with that, we will cover that briefly in just a second. It's kind of an interesting case. And then I want to discuss our Eggs and Issues event that we had here in Douglas and Coffee County this morning at the Martin. We did a video on that. Some of you may have watched that. Then also our legislative delegation came in to the studios here at Coffee County Broadcasters just across the hall in the 106.7 The Buck Studios, and we spent about 45 minutes or so with them discussing a lot of the same things that we went over with Eggs and Issues, but I want to add a little bit of commentary to that. So you're going to get a little bit of news and a lot of commentary here this morning. I will warn you ahead of time. Some people don't like it when I start commenting. They don't like the commentary side of things, but you're going to get a little bit of that this morning. But first of all, the GHSA has decided not to fight the injunction that a Superior Court judge issued regarding the suspension of 34 Gainesville players from its semifinal football game with Langston Hughes. Now, let's back up a little bit, all right? Back on November 21st, Brunswick High School traveled to Gainesville to play in a semifinal not a semifinal, but play in a playoff game up there. A fight broke out with less than 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. Gainesville was up, I believe, 42-0. The game was over with. Brunswick wasn't coming back, and a couple of Brunswick players started fights with the Gainesville players, and the benches emptied, and it was a big. There's a lot of video online. You can see that. And it's been watched hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times by now. There are, again, a couple different videos. What happened in the aftermath was the officials called the game there at the end of the third quarter and said, look, the game's over with. We're going home. Of course, the GHSA and school officials reviewed the videos and did an investigation such as they could do in the few days from the time the game was played until they issued a ruling on Monday morning. Now, what's kind of interesting, they had to work in a hurry because Gainesville still has to play. Gainesville's season is still alive. Brunswick, their season's over with. They could take time and do what they wanted to do to Brunswick. But Gainesville, in Gainesville's case, they had to move in a hurry. What they ended up doing was suspending 38 Gainesville players. It was initially reported that it was 39, but it was actually 38 Gainesville players were suspended, and 41 Brunswick players were suspended. Now, Brunswick was also fined and given a postseason ban for next year. And Brunswick is a playoff caliber football team. They make the postseason regularly, and they were in the playoffs last year. We beat them over there at their place, and as we made our way to the semifinals. But Brunswick will not be able to play in the postseason next year because of what happened on November 21st. Now, what Gainesville did was, and I'm oversimplifying this quite a bit, what Gainesville did was appeal. They said, look, we don't like that. We're going to appeal. So they did, and GHSA reinstated 4 players. So you've still got 34 players that are suspended. Now, the GHSA did not identify those players. They won't do that. There are a lot of reasons why they can't do that. So not all these kids were starters, but a few I'm sure were. And it would severely handicap that team as they prepared for the playoffs or for the semifinal game with Langston Hughes, which Hughes beat us last year in the semifinals and went on and played Milton in the finals, and Milton beat them. But Hughes is a pretty good team and been at the top of the rankings all year long. All right, so you really need to be at full strength if you're going to play a game like that. Well, Gainesville was still not happy with that, so they filed a lawsuit, and a Superior Court judge granted an injunction against the enforcement of those suspensions, meaning that those players would still be able to play when Gainesville played Hughes. Well, the GHSA decided that they didn't like that either, so they were going to appeal. And when they announced their intentions to appeal, what that did was threw the 5A playoffs into a tailspin. Hughes and Gainesville were supposed to play this past Friday night. They did not play. They still have not played. So we've got state championship games coming up. You only got a couple of more games left. And now the entire 5A playoff, the 5A bracket, has been thrown into chaos because the GHSA would not accept the judge's decision. The best case scenario for having this appeal heard is several months down the road. So if the GHSA followed through on what it had planned to do, which was to fight the injunction, you wouldn't get a ruling until well into next year. Thankfully, the GHSA has decided that it will not fight the injunction. It's given up its case and says, we're going to let the judge's ruling stand. Now, they didn't do so because it was a good idea. They didn't do so because in general it was the right thing to do. They went back and looked, and they found a little loophole that they could come back and say, well, we really would like to enforce this, but we're not going to because there's some inconsistency in how we handled a situation like this in the past. What I'm about to read to you comes from the Georgia High School Football Daily. What happened here was Gainesville pointed out an inconsistent ruling between its case and one involving a couple schools in Macon, Southwest and Northeast, back on August the 22nd. Right, the Northeast-Southwest game was suspended in the third quarter, and one team was declared the winner. But the GHSA did not suspend all the players. There was another fight in that game, and the GHSA did not issue any suspensions for players in that game who left the bench. And that was something that GHSA Executive Director Tim Scott recognized and knew that if they had not suspended people back in August, they could not suspend players here in November/December. Monday afternoon, Scott said, we didn't address it the same way we addressed this situation. I felt we handled the Gainesville case by the bylaws, but the earlier one, I'm not sure we did what we needed to do, and I felt we needed to correct the situation. When there's an inconsistency with what we do at the office, it's my responsibility, and I needed to correct it. So the 5A games are back on, and it did mess the bracket up a little bit. All right, what's going to happen? See, all the semifinal games across classifications were supposed to be played this last Friday. Let me double check that. Let's go to the 6A bracket. I do not want to misspeak on this because it is quite confusing. So, no, this coming Friday, the semifinal games were supposed to be played, and then they're going to be off until December 15th, 16th, and 17th. So you're going to get about a week and a half off before the state championship games played. That's the way it is in every classification except for 5A. So again, this weekend, 1A through 4A will play their semifinal games, and then, of course, 6A will play. Now, 5A is a little bit different because of what's happened. So what's going to happen now is there will be one game this Friday. It will be the quarterfinal game between Hughes and Gainesville. So everybody else is off. Then on December the 11th, when the other classifications are off, 5A will play its semifinal games, and then 6 days later they will play the state championship game. Now, what the GHSA did do is normally the 6A state title game is the last game played, and it was originally scheduled for December 17th. So what they're going to do is back the 6A game up a day, and the 5A game, which would have been played on the 16th, is now moving to the 17th to give those teams an extra day. So what's going to happen here is these other teams who are playing for state titles, when we get to that point, they will have a week and a half off before they play for the state championship. So they're going to have from December the 5th till December 15th, 16th, or 17th, depending upon the classification. They're going to have that break between semifinals and finals. 5A will not do that. They're getting their break early, right? 5A is going to play its semifinal games on December the 11th and turn around on December 17th and play its state championship game. So it's messed everything up. And no matter what happens, there are going to be questions about what would have happened if the GHSA had done the right thing and not fought the injunction initially, announced its intentions to fight the injunction. Now, let me go on record, and I will say this, and I will say this unabashedly. All right. It's a mixed bag with the GHSA. What they have is a very difficult job. You think of the number of schools, the number of sports, the playoffs, the championships, the officiating, all that they have to organize and work through and deal with, in addition to the political ramifications of the decisions that they make. There's a lot of politics involved. There are a lot of special interests involved. There's a lot of junk that goes on with this stuff. So they have to manage that. So on the one hand, they do a pretty good job of that. On the other hand, they are extremely tone deaf at times and make some incredibly questionable, let me back up on what I was initially going to say, and make some questionable decisions. All right. Now, one of the issues that I have, and I'll put this on the table that is absolutely a little bit personal here, is that the GHSA does not recognize Douglas Now or any other electronic media outlet as a legitimate media source. So if I need to get credentials to go to any type of GHSA game, if I have to go through the GHSA, they will not grant me those credentials. And I ran into that in 2023 when we played for the state championship and won the state championship up in Atlanta. I could not get a media pass from the GHSA to cover that event. Now, I did get a pass, but I had to get a pass through the school, not through the GHSA. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The main reason is that the GHSA is still heavily influenced by the Georgia Press Association, and the Georgia Press Association is controlled by old-time newspaper men. There's still a lot of those out there. And the newspaper folks don't want to concede anything to electronic outlets. And the GHSA, again, because of their affiliation with the Georgia Press Association, will not recognize electronic-only outlets, even though we are very much a legitimate media source, even though we have been the primary source of news for not just Coffee High School, but for all of our sports here in our community for the last 10 years. And we have been very consistent with that. And I think we report the news, sports included, the way that it should be reported. All right. So again, it's a little irritating that the GHSA does not recognize us as such. Now, and it's not just us. There is, I know I've talked to some other folks who also have electronic only outlets who run into the same things, who are very much legitimate and who are part of the decision makers when it comes to high school sports in our state. And they still get the same treatment from the GHSA. But again, you go back to what happened in 2017 when we played Lee County for the state championship. First of all, I thought the GHSA made a very premature decision to cancel the games that it did. And the Benz you remember for the snow that came that ended up being largely a non-event. The GHSA quickly canceled some games, and instead of trying to find another neutral site, which I believe Mercer University had come up and said, look, you can play these remaining state title games on our field in a neutral site in Macon, which is a better place from a travel standpoint than going all the way up into the heart of Atlanta to play in the Benz. The kids love the Benz. It's kind of a neat experience, but it's not the end-all, be-all, and there are other options that could be more viable than playing the games there. But I'm not discussing that. It's fine to do what they do with that. But in 2017, it was a bad decision, and then they would not consider anything else, any other neutral sites. I thought that was bad. And then you've had some inconsistencies with some of the officiating that has gone on in the state title games. Some calls potentially changed the outcome of games, and the GHSA refused up until very recently to have any type of instant replay in those football games. Listen, if you play a game, whether it's a high school game, whether it's a wherever, whatever sport it is, whatever game it is, if you play in a facility that has instant replay capabilities and you have that technology, you're able to connect to that technology, you should use it. These games are on television. They're being broadcast throughout the state, and if you get on there and stream them, you can stream them from anywhere. These replays are being shown over and over and over from every different angle possible. You want to make sure that you get a call right, particularly one that could potentially change the outcome of a game. And that has happened a couple of times here in the last few years. GHSA finally did decide to go to instant replay in certain situations. But you want to get the calls right. You want to get them right. And if you have that technology, you should use it. But anyway, I've had some problems with the GHSA. They seem a little bit tone deaf. This time they dug their heels in, and it's not a good look for them. And it's not a good look for what happens from here on out. Now, that game between Hughes and Gainesville, Hughes is going to be favored, heavily favored. You could probably successfully argue that Hughes would win that game regardless. But now you've sown a seed of doubt. Now you've given a little bit of reasonable doubt in the minds of both teams. What happens if we lose? Would this have happened if we had stayed on the schedule? And that's another, going back to one of the issues I have. Listen, the GHSA makes some decisions sometimes that can help determine the outcome of a game off the field. All right. And I don't like that. I really don't like that. And this was a bad look for the GHSA to announce they're going to appeal. They were able to find something that allowed them to back away and save face, but still, you've affected the playoff brackets for 5A and now 6A. Will it change things? You don't know, but you have opened that door for that discussion. Now there's a what if, and the GHSA should not be in that business. So again, and I might be a little bit nicer to them if they give me a press pass. They're going to have to, by the way. Something's gonna have to change here, because most people get their news electronically. And now that you've got the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I don't know how many of you know this or not, but the AJC is going to an online-only format on January 1. The last time a print edition of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution will be distributed is December 31. So we've got less than a month, and the printed AJC will no longer be available. It will all be online, and I suspect you're going to see some attitudes and opinions regarding electronic media change once that happens. Our second topic of today, eggs and issues at the Martin Center this morning. We had a video of that. You can go watch that in its entirety. We did that this morning starting at 8 o'clock. It lasted from about 8 to 9 on stage at the Martin Center. It was a good event. We had our legislative delegation, our state legislative delegation here. And looking at our photo, you have me standing there on the far side. Next to me is Senator Blake Tillery, then Representative Angie Osteen, Representative James Burchett, and then State Senator Cardin Summers. Coffee County is split among or between its state house and state senate districts. Representative Osteen and Representative Burchett each have parts of Coffee County. Angie Osteen has most of the county. There's a little sliver of the southern portion of the county, and going down into Atkinson, Ware, Lanier, and a portion of Lowndes County, I believe, that Representative Burchett has. The line of demarcation in our state senate district is basically Highway 441. There's a little that kind of floats a little bit at some point, but for the most part, Highway 441 east, you have Senator Tillery. Highway 441 west, you have Senator Summers. A couple of things I just want to hit on, and this is a picture. They came in, and we were on the radio this morning from about 10 to 11, interviewing them and touching base. And then, of course, that's Paul Elliott there on the other side by Senator Summers, and then I'm on the opposite end here by Senator Tillery. But a couple of things that really struck me out of that discussion, and you know, the legislative session is about to begin, and Eggs and Issues is an opportunity for our legislators to frame the issues that will likely come up during the session, and to give us, you know, a glimpse, you know, behind the scenes there at the Gold Dome to see what we can expect as the session begins. There were a couple of things that they talked about that I thought were kind of interesting, and one of the things that Senator Tillery really got into was affordability. And if you follow the national discourse, if you follow some of the economic indicators, the pundits will tell you that we're doing good. The economy's doing good, stock market's doing good. There are a lot of indicators that show that the economy should be strong and it should be thriving. But if you go to the grocery store, if you look in your checkbook, if you talk to your neighbors, you will see that is not necessarily the case. We have an affordability issue, not just in Georgia, but in our country, particularly when it comes to housing. But it's not limited to housing. Everything is going up. Everything. Our dollar does not go as far as it used to. We don't have the buying power that we used to. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense. I would not want to be buying a house right now. We've had people talk to us about selling our house because we got our house at such a good deal. We've been in there for, I think, 22 years now, you know, and it's over twice as valuable now as it was then. You know, you want to sell this, you can make a pile of money if you sell your house. Well, yeah, but what am I going to do with it? I'm going to turn around and eat all of that up, buying another house, and get less than I've got now. Why would I do that? It is phenomenal, in a bad way, what houses are going for. If I had to graduate from college, if I had to start a new family, and buying a house was on my checklist, I don't know that I could do it. I'm worried for I got a kid in college. He's going to be out in a few years. What's he going to do? He's not going to be able to afford a house on the salary that he's going to make. All right. It's not possible. Senator Tillery spoke about that. He said that one of the things he wants to do, he thinks this can help, would be to eliminate the state income tax. Now, if you eliminate tax dollars on one side, you've got to replace it with tax dollars on the other side. So my immediate question is, what are you going to do? So if we're going to eliminate the state, the state income tax, what are we going to replace it with? Now, he's the chair of the Appropriations Committee and has been for a while. So he's got a pretty good handle on the finances of our state, where the money comes from and where it goes. And his idea is to close some of the loopholes with corporate tax credits and corporate welfare. And he said this, and it's, again, it's an oversimplification of a serious project, but said state income tax brings in about $16 billion. That's billion with a B, $1 billion a year. Well, we have corporate tax credits and corporate tax exemptions in Georgia of over 30 billion. So you're not going to close all of them, but you're going to close a little bit of that. And you can eliminate slowly. It's not going to happen in one time. You're going to have to cut that percentage back over a period of several years. But if you do that, you can gradually begin to replace it by closing more and more of these loopholes. And what that's going to do is it's going to give people in Georgia more money. And we're going to be able to keep the money that we make and spend it where we see fit, not give it to the state and have them spend it where they want to. And of course, you're also going to close some of these tax exemptions. And he gave an example of a few of these. One was if you buy like $15 million worth of computers, if you're a business industry, you go out and you buy $15 million worth of computers, you don't pay sales tax on that. And the example that he used, well, yeah, they may not, but if you go down to Walmart and buy your kid a laptop, you're paying sales tax on that. So why are you paying sales tax? And think of the sales tax on $15 million worth of computers. It's a significant amount of money, a lot of money. But things like that are on the books. So, they're going to be tackling that and handling that. Now, if you know anything about Senator Tillery, he's running for lieutenant governor. So this will be the last time that he is in session as a senator. He will either be out of government if he doesn't win the election, or he will be still in state government, but in a different position in there as lieutenant governor. But this is something that he is passionate about. And he said, look, I've done the math. It'll work. It'll work if we do it, but we got to do it. So that's one thing they talked about. We also talked about the timber industry. We probably haven't done a good enough job covering this, but the timber industry is in a mess in Georgia. The timber industry is in trouble. It really is. And the next few years are going to be pivotal. That's not even the right word. Crucial, maybe critical in determining the future of the timber market here in Georgia as a whole, but also particularly in our area. All right. If you followed, again, some of the news, International Papers closed a couple of mills over in the Savannah area, and then over in Early County, a big GP mill closed down there. It's hurt. It's hurt bad. All right. We all feel that sting. And even though this is not directly related to Coffee County, a lot of the timber that is cut in our area went to Georgia Pacific Mills or went over to the International Paper Facility. So the timber market was hit hard from Hurricane Helene. It got another haymaker when these mills closed. So what's going to happen? Well, we need to open up different markets, right? The most immediate thing that we can do is that we can send our timber over to Europe. Now, Europe right now is importing a lot of its timber from Brazil, all right? But we can export our timber quicker and cheaper from here than they can in Brazil. There are a few issues that need to be worked out. Mainly, there's an insecticide that we use on the ships, not in the fields or in the forest, but we use on our ships to kill a certain type of nematode that they don't have to deal with down in Brazil. So they don't have to worry about that, but we do. The European Union does not allow that insecticide. So we're trying to work that out to see if we can overcome that obstacle. If we can, that would give us the most relief. The most immediate relief would be to export our wood over to Europe. Long term, what the Europeans do is they take our pellets, right, and they burn them for energy. Now, we can do that as well. We've been told that we can't do it because it's not cost effective, but when you break it down and you look at it, it really is. It can be done in a cost effective manner, and that would make a long-term impact, a long-term positive impact on our area. You could build, they were talking about building 3 of those plants, and then you would also have to have processing plants to take the trees and turn them into pellets, and then you take the pellets to the plants and you burn them for energy, and then you put that out there on the grid. All right. That solves a lot of problems. You're probably 5 years away from doing that, though. So the most immediate fix is to export our trees to Europe. The long-term fix is to take those pellets and then use them, burn them for energy like they do in Europe. That also solves another problem that's on the hearts and minds of people in South Georgia. That would help alleviate some of the anxiety around solar panels. All right? Because solar's a big deal in Washington. All right? They are heavily subsidizing that industry. But down here, we know what happens. And look, it's an economic decision for the farmers. If, you can rent land for a few $100s an acre, or you can sell it or lease it to a solar panel company for $3,000 an acre, what are you going to do? Hello, solar panels. But solar panels are problematic because they take farmland out of circulation for a long time. And who knows what kind of condition that land will be in once the solar lease is up. You got to have some type of procedures in place to clean up the property, get the solar panels out, and then return that property to its intended use, which is, agriculture land, timberland, what have you. All right. So if we can take our land and grow trees on it, and then keep those trees here and use them as an energy source, a renewable energy source, then that lessens the demand for solar panels in our area. Instead of putting solar panels on your property, you're going to plant trees. So that would go a long way in alleviating a couple of problems. So that was something else that they talked about. And then lastly, one of the things I want to mention, and Representative Osteen and I have talked about this, and we mentioned on the radio a little bit, are the relationships. Ultimately, we want our delegates to go to Atlanta and build relationships with those statewide partners, with the partners that we have in Washington, D.C. And as we talk about exporting our trees to Europe, we're talking about international relationships that in turn benefit South Georgia and Coffee County directly. So, we oftentimes think about paving roads and passing laws and doing things like that. But ultimately, what we want these folks here to do is go to Atlanta and build the relationships that will help us improve our quality of life and improve our way of life here in Southeast Georgia. And somebody may say, well, that's just some pie in the sky stuff, right? No, that's exactly what happens. And that's what these folks are here to do, and that's what they need to do. And they're all committed to doing that. We can see that in what we get here, and we will see it. We will see it moving forward in the future. So it's been a busy morning. We hit the ground running about 7:30 at Eggs and Issues, shaking hands and talking with everybody, and then listening to what our delegates are doing. It's not, the picture is not as pretty as we would like for it to be. We don't want to talk about one of our largest industries in a state of peril, that being timber. Of course, we don't want to talk about affordability. We don't want to talk about people not being able to buy houses and their dollars not going as far as they used to go. But Georgia is still a great place to live. It's still a great place to do business, and we still have a lot going for us. And we have folks who are advocating for us. We have folks who are going to Atlanta who are trying to protect the interests that we have down here, because the folks in Atlanta, they want to take everything and keep it up there. They're not worried one bit if anything positive happens down here. But these are the folks in this picture, except for him and him. These four in the middle are the caretakers of our way of life, so to speak. And that's kind of a grandiose statement, but I don't know that it's altogether improper or inappropriate. Because if we don't have our legislators protecting our interest in Atlanta, nobody will, and they will take everything and we will get nothing. So there's still a lot of work to be done here. This will be an interesting legislative session. We need to keep our eyes on it and see what comes out of it. But again, let's pay attention to what happens with these exports to Europe. They're talking about a few months, maybe the first quarter of next year, they can get everything squared away. And then that would be a big boost to our economy here in Douglas and Coffee County and South Georgia in general. So I want to thank everybody for watching once again. Let's take a look at our tower cam. Not a very pretty day today. The last couple of tower cam images we've looked at have been nice and pretty. Today the rain has stopped, but it was, these are as ugly days, as ugly a day as you're going to get in South Georgia, when it's cold, it's wet, it's raining, the wind is blowing, it's gray. It's just nasty. It's just a nasty, nasty day. Weather's going to improve a little bit through the end of the week, but we're going to be right back on it on Saturday. I think over the weekend it's going to be a wet, nasty weekend then as well. But that's what it looks like. Looking back east to Douglas, the rain has quit, so maybe things will improve. Things will improve a little bit. I want to thank everybody for tuning in with us. We've been doing a lot of video this morning. We were there at the Martin Center first thing, and then Coffee Break was streamed live on the First Methodist Church Facebook page, and now we're doing Douglas Now Live here. So it's been a busy morning, but I thank you guys for hanging out with us. I appreciate it as always. If nothing happens between now and Thursday, we will meet again on Thursday morning. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you next time.